Hello there, welcome to a Second Thoughts overview of Thorek Ironbrow of the Dwarfs. Now I played through the initial turns and got a feel for the faction. As I drew my conclusions, I'm now going to discuss those and help you guys plan out your playthroughs. So in the end, as always, I'll give you some army compositions that I believe you could try with this faction overall. Now, not an in-depth guide, but it'll certainly help you out. Now, without wasting any more time, let's play then with Thorek Ironbrow of the Dwarfs. So for your short victory, you need to reforge at least 5 artifacts via the forge, and to also occupy Loot Razor Sec 30 different settlements. Now this is related to one of his mechanics. It's a decent sized campaign. It may take a while if you're under constant threat, especially given your location, but yeah, it's still a decent one, decent short campaign, really deserves the name. Achieving the results will give you +3 hero capacity, of course, great to give you some scout potential or just some heroes for your armies, and you avoid building too many buildings for them, that sort of idea. Especially giving your take on rootsmiths, it's also nice. So yeah, the long campaign victory, it requires you to achieve the short victory, to occupy Loot Razor Sec 70 different settlements, and ensure that the total severity of grudges in the Great Book of Grudges is no greater than 9. And now this may take some time, it depends really how many grudges you start getting, of course, but it is doable. It's actually one of the most decent long campaign victories. Now achieving it will give you +10 hero recruit rank, of course, excellent, that your heroes will become really good right from the start as you continue your conquests. Now Thorek, he is the master of the runes, and he gets 100% oath gold from buildings. The cost for crafting runes is halved in oath gold, of course, and runesmiths get +5 hero recruit rank and -25% upkeep. So in essence, this focus on the oath gold and the runesmiths, which is always nice, you know. So basically that's what you should go for. In terms of heroes, definitely a little bit more focus on the runesmiths. Now in terms of climates, it's good. Given your location, how about it? Mostly because of the mountains in this area here, where you can get a solid base, basically. But the main issue is that you have unpleasant with the desert. If it wasn't, then it would be fine. Let me show you this here. But also one of the major issues, if you want to go for a full domination campaign, well, once you reach the chaos areas, that will be quite a problem. So yeah, it's good, but it's not one of the easiest campaigns to do domination with. So your starting location is the capital of a 3-settlement province. It would be a bit better if it was not neighboring some powerful enemies such as Manfred here, but you do have the tools to deal with it. So typical expansion is then to solidify your initial position, conquer your initial province, and then you have to decide going against one of the legendary lords that you have nearby, either Manfred, either Khalida, maybe even Cetra. It's really up to you or up to the circumstances, depending who declares war on you and so forth. It's a hard campaign start, really, that I would recommend to take it slowly, ensuring that you keep an eye on diplomacy and on the nearby potential enemies to confirm that you're not under direct threat, you know, that no one is coming in to attack Karak-Zorn while you're in the north, or the other way around, that no one attacks your north settlements while you're trying to pursue Manfred here, and that sort of idea. So always be careful of this mountain pass. It's going to be difficult to defend, but well, you do have the tools for it. So yeah. So, diplomatically, you're part of the Order Tide. However, there's a substantial lack of it nearby, so be wary. Lizardmen and the Krokgar may prove a useful ally if you can ensure good relations with them. It would be wise to declare some wars versus their enemies, and maybe to negotiate that way your way through some initial treaties. Typical enemies will be the undead. Anywhere that is undead, of course, and then the greenskins, of course. Later on, Skaven, Skarbrand is also likely a target for you, so yeah, be wary. Be careful with those massive enemies. Now, outpost potential, like you see, you have plenty with the Lizardmen, with Empire, with Bretonia, especially Repounce if she survives. So make sure that she does survive to give you some cavalry units, of course, or even flyers. For Lizardmen, of course, they're single entities if you manage damage, but you'll always be fine even if they just reach some flyers or cavalry. So the Forge is a crafting mechanic that allows you to build a variety of items. You collect Oath Gold after battles, some buildings, as well as quests, and use them to improve your characters with weapons, armor, talismans, enchanted items, and then character runes, of course specifically to heroes and lords. And you also have banner runes. Now these ones are applied to units, which is really great. You can enhance their abilities or stats, such as adding explosive damage that reduces enemy leadership on an artillery unit, and you have 3 of them, so you can have specific armies with, you know, 1 artillery unit or maybe 2 artillery units with this effect, you know, to try and lower that enemy leadership while they're taking more damage, of course. So it's always nice to have these sort of customizable options. Now, specific to Thorek is the Artifact Vault. Now, there are several parts around the world for some artifacts that will give you immense value, such as you can summon an ancestor hero, a carnosaur, or even, you know, some army abilities, which is always nice. So these items, I'll show you, they're located in settlements, and you either needed to capture the settlement or to ally with whoever is owning that settlement. So that's also a possibility. It needs to be a military alliance, if not mistaken. So yeah, that's nice. Now, speaking of the Great Book of Grudges, it is 2 things. It's a nice mechanic that is about missions. So you have, in this case, it's all about reforging the artifacts. Okay, so I need to reforge the artifacts, and it will give me Oath Gold, and it will scratch 1 grudge from the book. So what it means is that if you have too many grudges on the Great Book, then this bar changes, of course, and you have either some nice buffs or debuffs. So diplomatic relations with dwarfs and research rate and construction cost and control, all of this is really great. But if it is on the maximum, it's the other way around. You have lesser research rate, lesser control, lesser diplomatic relations with dwarfs. You do gain some charge bonus, but I don't think that's effective enough to compensate for it. The only good thing is that you actually have a very high chance of slayers to be added to the regiments of renown. So this is a nice idea here. I believe I actually have a few. Let's go. Let's recruit some slayers here. So as you can see, it has that option of adding some slayers to your army, which is always a nice unit, especially the giants, the giant slayers here. So yeah, always remember that the grudges need to be settled, or need to be at least very low, to even complete the long victory. So that's something that is really important. As you notice, you need to have it on 9. Currently I have on 48. Thorek actually starts with the most of it, because, of course, of the artifact mechanic that he has. But yeah, remember that you always need to achieve those grudges. Don't let them accumulate. Try to simplify those, and that's the idea. Now, it's a nice mechanic also because it depends on what happens in the campaign, so no 2 campaigns will feel the same just because of how the Great Book of Grudges works in general. So another mechanic is the rune magic of sorts. So the dwarfs have a different system in place. Instead of costing winds of magic, it has cooldowns, which apply to each caster. So basically, with the here with the runesmiths, since you can get several, by all means you can use several here, but then you have that cooldown, and then you have this shared cooldown here. Okay, so that's the main idea here, but by all means with Thorek you can always field several of them, because they're already very powerful fighters under Thorek as well, which is quite nice. So yeah, that rune magic, always remember, it's very useful. Typically you would only bring 1, but even bringing a couple of these runesmiths is always nice, especially, of course, under Thorek. Now, in terms of province edicts, you have a recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity +1, which is always nice, especially the recruitment cost is kind of significant. Then we have a growth managed construction cost for all buildings and tradable resources faction-wide. So this one is useful on those provinces, like single provinces that you don't produce anything really, and you just want some effect for your faction wide. Then we have income from all buildings and control and corruption. very good, very straightforward ones, but still really cool. Now, in terms of the army stances, so most importantly, we do have the underway, which is of course a very tactical advantage of the dwarves to move through impassable terrain. I actually used it to get to character route from here, so from here to here, and then next turn I was able to attack, of course, and that allowed them to, you know, not have a place to escape or something like that, you know. Then we also have in camp 50% movement range cost, and then you have enables replenishment and immune to most attrition. We also have raiding, immunity to attrition as well there, and costs 50% movement points. Ambush for 25% movement points as well. Remember that the main part of the ambush is that you are hidden, so the AI will do different decisions. And of course you have the forced march as well. So, Karak Zorn has 2 special buildings, if you count the mine, of course, which always generates a good amount of income, and oath gold and several other stuff, which is really important as well. Then we have the landmark. Lord recruit rank +1, upkeep for -10% for long beards, recruitment cost -33%, so a third of the price, and then recruit rank +2 for long beards, all provinces, and it gives you one of the most important ones, local recruitment capacity +2. The dwarves typically struggle a little bit especially in the early game with local recruit capacity, so you're getting this building on the, you know, basically you can get it on the first few turns, and then suddenly you can build up quite some nice armies really fast, which is, it's always important when you, so that you can compete, you know, for especially against who you're against. You know, you're against undead factions who can recruit really fast. So especially on higher difficulties, this is a must to build as soon as possible so that you can keep up with that. Now, your full military requires 6 buildings. 2 of them may be built in minor settlements. They can be, you know, tier 3, so you can build them on minor settlements, such as I'm doing here. There are no tier 5 units actually, so the dwarves, like I've said before, they can reach their elites much faster than other factions. It should totally go for it. Still, tier 2 and 3 units can surprise you and everyone. Basic infantry has a great staying power. Long beards, for instance, are really good holding infantry. You also have the Iron Drakes, the Thunderers. Specifically with Thorek, you have the Quarrelers right in tier 2, which will behave really well. You can also recruit the Runesmiths here on tier 3. So yeah, it's really cool. In terms of infrastructure, we have growth and casualty replenishment rate. We have a basic income building. We have a dwarf beer production. So this isn't produced anywhere else. So of course it's valuable for the AI and control. And then we have Oath Gold, jack of all trades, like I like to say. Oath Gold generated per turn, income from tradable resources, and income from all buildings in the local province. So at least one of these will be very effective, especially in your capitals, where you can build it, of course. But yeah, really, really nice. You have plenty of mines around, really, so you should very much take the opportunity whenever possible to go for a place that has a mine, you know, precisely that you gain a little bit more, especially if you go on the research for it. Speaking of research, it's one of the best around. You actually start with the way of the guilds and the way of the clans, and then you can you know, go for each of the parts. It doesn't see well here, but it's kind of like divided, you know, via this line that I'm going here. So all of this is about reinforcing your military, or less recruitment costs, less upkeep, and by the time that you reach here, your units are crazy good. But the only downside is that it takes so long. If you manage to speed the research rate really well, and you get here, then your units are second to none. Really, second to none. I think the dwarves actually get the most changes for their units, especially their elite units, with the research line than anyone else, really. And then we have lots of income based ones here above. It's all income from here, income from there, which is always nice. It all adds up. Okay, and you also have some control, some lord recruits here. You also have some commandment changes that you can see here. So yeah, it's all, this is more the campaign, and this is more about the army. A very decent research tree. It takes ages to finish, so make sure that you pump up those research rate buffs whenever you can. As always, you have your Lord skills or specific ones, then you have the yellow line or combat, or in this case it's the magic one. Basically it's not magic, but it's rune magic, it counts. Then we have the red line or army, or blue line or campaign. Let's start with the blue line. It does have replenishment in the last one. It's not combined with the attrition losses, which I would like, but still you have a good one, which is this one that allows you to have more research rate and still the upkeep. Just those two, they're crazy good. Of course, it takes quite a while to reach this part, but the main idea here is that it's so important research that, and already your lords, they're quite powerful. You know, even this lord, you won't need to buff him too much for him to be quite effective in combat, so you can just go some red line and blue line all the way to Inquiring Minds, and therefore, you know, just your 5 initial lords, that is already 50% research rate, so it's really a nice advantage. And many of these lords, by the way, also have some increase of research rate, so yeah, always synergize those. That's the idea that was going here on this campaign, just to illustrate to you guys how you can advance that research. Red line is probably one of the best in the game. Good compositions and alternatives without spending too much. So for Thorek here, he goes a lot for Quarrelers. This is not Thorek. There we go. Here he goes for Quarrelers, so of course I'm already giving him that. He also goes for some bolt throwers ideas, but I don't think I'm gonna go for that here. But he goes also for artillery, so yeah, definitely there. There's a lot of good compositions in alternatives without spending too much, really. I'll show you some army compositions in a moment. There's no hero actually that provides replenishment, which does not help. You do have the Master Engineer and the Runesmith that both have abilities that are good for your army, such as, you know, increasing the missile and melee damage, like here, or the hardened armor. Using, you know, if you have 2, you can use one with the armor ability and one with the damage, which is always nice. You know, every single buff added up makes your army really powerful. So here's the red line for all the dwarf units. They have some great combinations, such as having the Iron Drakes here with also an artillery unit, the flame cannon, or the elite infantry that also has, you know, has a front line, has an anti-infantry, has anti-large. I mean, just 3 skills and you have nearly anything that you need in infantry, really. This implies you can get some good compositions without spending too much. So Thorek, he gives massive bonuses to overall the army, you know, armor piercing weapon damage and armor, it's already very good, but reload time reduction and all the buffs that he gives to the grudge throwers, to the Quarrelers, giving them more armor piercing missile damage and frenzy as well. So yeah, definitely, and also some changes for the Runesmiths, which is always cool. So that's why, you know, I would like to have some armies based on the Runesmiths. These guys can hold the line as well, act as your infantry. Then you can have this, an army full of Quarrelers. They'll be your front line too. You know, just some mix with the great weapons ones and the shielded ones, just for good measure. Some cannons, some grudge throwers. This could be bolt throwers, but it will increase here the number of skill points that I would need for the red line, so that's why I didn't. Of course, nothing wrong with going some infantry. Remember that everyone was going to have frenzy, so that's always a nice idea. And still some cannons, some, you know, some artillery for good measure. And this one you can see that is much more expensive because I'm also trying to incorporate some bolt throwers, just to have that nice idea to reduce the leadership, you know, and with that ability. And also a gyro bomber. Why? Because the gyro bombers and gyrocopters are buffed up by the same one that gives bonuses to the bolt throwers. It's kind of sad. I think that these two, if they were together and if this were here, it would be so much easier to get some compositions. But yeah, these are just some ideas that I would try out for some fun with Thorek. And then these are kind of like your bread and butter, you know, just some easy pickings here, you know, just some, typically I'd like to go with a front line of Longbeards, or with Iron Breakers and Hammers and some Giant Slayers. This is an idea of just using, you know, some Iron Drakes and then some Flame Cannons, or you can go with some Organ Guns here. And notice how always very effective it is in terms of red line skills. And then, of course, you can have some sweeper armies, really, which is basically some armies that don't necessarily fight everything, but you can definitely use them throughout the game. I think I used every single one of these armies, and they always fight really well. Dwarves are very sturdy, and especially with the outpost mechanic, then you can always give them some specific units that will turn the tide of the battle and how the army plays out, and give you even more variety. So Thorek brings a bit of a fresh air to the Dwarfs, given his starting location, his enemies nearby, and his unique artifacts and short campaign victories. It's definitely one I would recommend if you just want to try out the Dwarfs. If you have the DLC, by all means, pick Thorek, you won't regret it. For the most part, you'll also be focused on the ranged part of your forces, which is always nice. It's a nice change of pace of those Dwarfs that focus perhaps on the melee part, like Ungrim, for instance. For the most part, your army. It consists of great infantry, great missiles and artillery, average flyers, no cavalry, no single entities, and they do have that specific rune magic. So replenishment is good, considering you do not have a hero to assist with it, but likely you're going to be expanding into at least suitable or unpleasant terrain. So as long as it can go into the pleasant terrain or just suitable or unpleasant, you're fine. And it will take quite a while before you can even need to go for uninhabitable, so that's why I'm giving it a good rating in terms of replenishment. So time for you to play and seek out those artifacts with the Master of the Runes, Thorek Ironbrow.